would say, multiple instances where you got to know about the data breach, right? One is from the external environment. So in the recent past, we heard that a lot of Twitter accounts has been hacked, right? So this is the news actually coming from the outside world. Twitter itself couldn't identify whether there is a data breach or not, right? So that is the one way that you get information from the hackers directly. Or the second thing, maybe somebody who has been hacked inform the organization, okay, my account, because there are a lot of trolls which is happening on my account, there are a lot of posts that is happening, but I'm not the person who has actually done that, right? So this is from the outsider perspective. Now coming to the insider, there are two ways to detect it. One thing is, if there is a regular monitoring of the logs, right? So then the SOC team, as I mentioned about the use cases, right? So if one of the use case of the scenario capture those anomalies happen during the data activity, during any admin activities on databases on the application side at an OS level, right? So they came up with those things. Okay, as a SOC team member, I can say in my report, yes, I found these three anomalies. Can you please highlight what was the reason to extract this data? What was the reason to modify this data, right? And in response of that, I can report it back to the management. So that is one from the insider perspective. When you have the SIEM tools in place to actually get piped all the logs from your all IT infrastructure and use some analogies, use AI algorithm on that and get out of some insights. The third way would be, if any employee get to know, okay, there is some personal data and that person is using for that purpose, right? But this is something which is confidential. This is something which should not be available to that person, because the user access right now comes into the picture. That person doesn't belong to this function. However, he has or she has access to this data, right? So there is a potential breach. I would not call it as a data breach, but yes, there is a potential breach that can happen. This is the multiple ways that you can actually identify. What actually had happened based on the reports that is again in the public domain. So one thing is, in 2018 we have seen, again, I would not like to take the name of the organization, but in 2018, if you see the data breaches, right, there was a very famous data breach case with one of the e-commerce organization, right? And what had happened, because one of the employees actually asked for the customer data, and in response of that, he has shared all the data with other operational team, that this is my current data, this is the data that I am also getting from the outside, and can you just make in comparison and identify which has not been already covered, because I have to pay back to the vendor whom I got this data, right? But he unintentionally shared all the customer data to the other team member who are not supposed to have the access of that, and that team member is actually asked, oh, I can see some of my known to as well, and because of that he actually exploited all the data to some other members, and then within the organization, and then somehow it leaked out, right? So that was a very famous case that happened in India. Now, if I give you an example of the California University. So in California University, USA, what had happened, that was also around 2 years back. So there also one of the student has actually made their profile public, and just because he got exploited by some of the hacker, they were able to get inside. And California University, because for them their IT operation is just a support function, so they didn't have that kind of a mechanism like the proper SOC team, red and purple teaming to identify the vulnerabilities and those kind an encryption enabled on their data just to protect the environment. So that was a basic things, right? And then when it happened, so they got to know, oh, there is a data breach, and a lot of students' data had actually exploited to the external world. The third use case which I wanted to discuss, and I would also like to praise Singapore government for that. So in Singapore, there was a very famous case of the Sing Health data breach. So that happened somewhere close to 2018 again, and in 2017, 2018, it started a year back, came out in the public in 2018, close to that, and then in 2019, actual Sing Health COI recommendation came in public domain, where the government has suggested they set up a committee and they came up with a report and the recommendations for every CIS system that they should be abide by that, so that that should not happen again.